Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I painted the Darkoath Savages, the Proven. Here he is. This is the model that we'll be painting in the video today. And I used the card as a reference and also some of the images from the Red Harvest book. And the idea with this is to go for a quick and easy tabletop ready miniature using mostly contrast paints and some dry brushing. This will be a little bit quicker than the Darkoath Slaughterborn video I did, but you can also see the God Speaker video as well. And using all the techniques from those 3 videos, you'll be able to paint all the members of the Darkoath Savages warband. In this video we'll mostly be using contrast paints, some shades, some base paints and also some Vallejo paints as well. And the brushes I use in this video are a very vegan makeup brush, the Citadel layer small brush, and then just a scruffy old big brush. The first step was to prime the model, and I used a Wraithbone contrast undercoat paint, and this was a spray, nice and easy, and this is great for contrast paints. Okay, let's get started with our first paint, which is the contrast Basilicanum grey, and this is going to be a nice thick coat all over the base, and that base has already been made and primed along with the model, and you can see lots of videos on my channel about how to do these simple bases. Then we're going to take some contrast skeleton horde and just pick out those skulls that are on all the bases. Now I'm painting all 10 models of the warband at the same time, so I'm doing this step on each of them. Then once that's dried, I took some Sky Grey Vallejo 0.989, a very vegan makeup brush, and this has got some super soft bristles here, and these are perfect, really cheap, like £1 each. I'm going to load the bristles up with some of that paint, work it into a little piece of card, and then get most of the paint off on some kitchen towel. And then once I've done that, I'm going to take the base, remember, got to be completely dry here, and I'm going to go all over it, picking out the raised areas. And once I'm happy with how much paint is coming off the brush, I can be a little bit rougher around the edges and the areas that would catch most of the highlight. Then it's time for some contrast Guilliman flesh, and this is a little bit different to the previous model when we did the Slaughterborn. So that was a darker skin, but here we're going straight up Guilliman flesh, really easy, a great paint. And I'm putting quite a lot of paint on here because we've got lots of surface area, there's lots of recesses where we want the shadow, and I'm starting and ending my brushstrokes where I want most of that paint to build up, and then if it's pooling where I don't want it to be, I'm just spreading it around with the brush. And then going in all these little nooks and crannies. I'm not worried if I go over like different parts like the hair, because we can tidy that up later. And here on the face now, I'm putting quite a lot of paint in there because it's quite dark, there's quite a recess. But if you find you've put too much on, just wipe your brush on some kitchen towel and then soak up a little of the paint like I've done here. And then just pick out the hands as well, so all those features get a nice coat. Then I took some base Leadbelcher, and this is going to be blocking in any parts of metal that are on the model. So whether we paint the model silver or gold, I always go with a Leadbelcher and then use contrast to colour it later on. So I'm picking out the buckles and all the straps and the belts, these little protective pieces on the arm guard here, and just anywhere on the model where you might see little details like this little runestone. I'm painting those metal rather than stone. And then on the back we've got a little plate as well, a little metal plate. And then also on the back straps there you've got little buckles, so I wanted to give those a coat too. Then I thought I'd tidy it up with some base Wraithbone, and this is an important stage to keep every part of the model nice and crisp, the lines between the colours really tidy, and that makes a huge difference to the end piece. Then I took some contrast Flesh Tearers Red, and this is going to go on the piece of material that's hanging down from the belt there. And we've got quite a large surface area again, so I'm putting a fair amount of paint on. I'm not using a big brush, this is just the Citadel small brush, which is fine for this. And I'm going along all the edges, moving the model to make it a lot easier for myself, and then just as before, pushing and pulling that paint around and ending and starting my brushstrokes where I want most of the paint to build up. The next paint is the contrast Black Templar, and this is great for a leather effect. I'm going to use this on the boots, and quite a lot of paint I put on with the Black Templar. So you find with the contrast paints, some of them you need a bit more than others, but this is a great paint. It really brings out the raised areas and leaves a little bit of a highlight, and then works its way into those recesses nicely. So once I've done the boots, I'll pick out the other areas like the straps around the arms, and also those leather belts and the kind of straps that they wear across the chest too. And then of course the hair, and the hair will take a lot of paint because there is a lot of surface area in between each of these strands. So I put a lot on, taking a little bit of extra care now because we were painting near another area we've already done previously. Then it's time for some Aggaros dunes, and I'm using this for the trousers mostly, and I'm putting quite a lot on again, not flooding it completely. That's why I think it's good to use a smaller brush sometimes, because you've got a lot more control about how much paint goes on, whereas other times it's good to use a bigger brush, so really just finding which paint reacts better to the brush size, but that all comes with experimenting and practice. Then it's time for contrast skeleton horde, and I'm going to go over any of these little skulls that are just hanging around. He's got one on his belt here. Then some shade now with the Nuln oil, and this is going to go on all the metal areas. So be quite generous with this, and this flows really nicely into all the deep recesses and really brings it to life, gives it some different shade. I'm going over every part of the metal there, and then I also thought I'd use this to give a grey effect over those tassels of fur that are coming out from the boots. So this is really nice and simple, but I think it worked well. Then I'm back to the Aggaros dunes, and now with that metal and shade completely dry, I'm going to go over and paint in this gold effect on the metal. So using contrasts over Leadbelcher works really well, as you can see on the buckle there. And it's time to do the base, so I take some Abbadon black, a bit of blue tack, pop my miniature on there, and then that's going to be a little turntable, making it really easy to paint. And then you might need 1 or 2 coats. I go quite thick, but you might do 2 thinner coats if you prefer. And the final stage is to take some Stormhost silver layer paint, that same dry brushing technique with working it into the bristles, and then I'm just going to go over all the edges of the metalwork, being really careful now not to catch any of the other areas I've painted, and that's going to be us done. And there we go, there's our proven model painted to a tabletop ready standard with contrast paints mostly and a little bit of dry brushing. I'm really happy with the result. For the time involved, you get a nice tabletop ready piece, and I think the contrast paints have worked really nicely here. Having that combination of gold with the red and black I think is a nice touch. And here's another model with the same hairstyle, and the two next to each other, they look identical. So in Warcry, you could play these as kind of brothers, but I'm going to be using them in some of my games with Weekend Warriors, where I can use the same character, but have 2 models to represent him with different weapons. And here's all the models from the warband, all painted up. I used some different skin tones. I gave the female ones a kind of bright orange hair, but I think they worked out really nicely, and they all match the images as close as I could get it with the contrast paints. I'll put a list of all the paints used in this video in the description below, and some links so you can save up to 20% on them as well. And then here's the other 2 models that you can look out for with videos for the God Speaker, again tabletop ready with contrast paints, and also the Slaughterborn as well. You may also be interested in the Red Harvest terrain painting video I've done, and also I did a couple of videos looking at the new speed paints from Army Painter, so you can check out these 4 colours, they're up on the channel, and one of those was to paint this Christmas themed The Red Gobbo. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this gave you an idea of how you could get your miniatures painted really easily, but for some nice results with contrast paints. I'd love to hear your feedback, so let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make these daily videos possible, and if you're interested in joining the community, it'd be awesome to see you there, and I'll put a link for that in the description down below.